Have you ever wondered about the mysteries that lie within the human mind, especially those rare conditions that few have heard of? Today, we're venturing into a realm where the ordinary turns extraordinary. We will explore 7 of the rarest mental disorders known to science. Each of these disorders presents a unique set of symptoms and challenges, shedding light on the vast complexities of the human brain. From unusual perceptions to altered realities, these conditions are as intriguing as they are rare. Prepare to delve into the depths of the human psyche as we uncover these extraordinary conditions. Imagine believing that your loved ones have been replaced by imposters. That's the reality for those with Capgras Syndrome. Capgras Syndrome is a bewildering psychological condition where individuals are convinced that someone close to them, often a family member or friend, has been substituted by an identical-looking imposter. This delusion is not just a fleeting thought, it's a steadfast belief that can severely disrupt daily life and relationships. The roots of Capgras Syndrome are as complex as the condition itself. It's often associated with brain injuries, particularly those affecting the right hemisphere, which is crucial for facial recognition and emotional processing. Moreover, it's frequently observed in conjunction with psychiatric disorders, most notably schizophrenia. Those experiencing Capgras Syndrome often suffer from acute paranoia. Imagine the distress and mistrust one might feel, constantly doubting if the person before them is truly who they appear to be. This doubt isn't limited to people. Some sufferers even believe pets and objects have been replaced. This intense suspicion can lead to significant social withdrawal, isolating the individual, and complicating their relationships. Treatment for Capgras Syndrome typically involves a combination of antipsychotic medications and psychotherapy. These interventions aim to manage the delusions and help the individual rebuild trust in their perceptions and relationships. Cognitive behavioral therapy, in particular, is used to challenge and change the harmful beliefs and behaviors stemming from the delusion. For those with Capgras Syndrome, the familiar becomes eerily unfamiliar. What if your perception of the world suddenly changed size and proportion? Imagine looking at a familiar object, only to see it shrink to the size of a pebble or swell to the enormity of a mountain. This bewildering condition is known as Alice in Wonderland syndrome, a rare neurological disorder that distorts sensory perceptions. Named after Lewis Carroll's famous character who experienced similar fantastical changes in size, Alice in Wonderland syndrome primarily affects how one perceives the size and distance of objects. People with this syndrome might see walls closing in or the ground stretching out endlessly. It's not just visual distortions, the syndrome can also alter the sense of time, making minutes feel like hours, and the body image, where parts of the body are perceived as disproportionately large or small. Most intriguingly, Alice in Wonderland syndrome often first appears in childhood, an age filled with rapid physical and neurological development. It frequently correlates with other conditions, notably migraines. In some cases, it can also be associated with brain tumors or epilepsy, making it crucial to understand its underlying causes. The symptoms, while typically transient and episodic, can be deeply disorienting and unsettling. Treatment therefore focuses on addressing these root causes, particularly in managing migraines, which are often a trigger for the perceptual distortions experienced. In essence, Alice in Wonderland syndrome transforms the world into a puzzling wonderland, challenging our assumptions about reality and the stability of our sensory experiences. This syndrome, rare and complex, reminds us of the incredible and sometimes confounding capabilities of the human brain. Extreme self-neglect and hoarding might signify something deeper, as seen in Diogenes Syndrome. This rare mental disorder is marked by extreme self-neglect, social withdrawal, and an overwhelming compulsion to hoard items, often perceived as garbage or worthless by others. Notably prevalent among the elderly and those suffering from dementia, Diogenes Syndrome paints a complex picture of mental health in decline. Individuals with this condition typically live in severely unsanitary conditions, showing a startling lack of shame or concern about their living situation. Their homes are often cluttered to the brim, filled with items that pose health risks. Despite the apparent chaos, the act of hoarding gives them a sense of security, albeit a misguided one. Addressing Diogenes Syndrome requires a thoughtful intervention strategy, engaging both social services and mental health professionals. The approach is delicate, focusing on building trust and providing care without overwhelming the individual. Through such interventions, the aim is to gently guide them back to healthier living conditions and better personal care. Diogenes Syndrome shows how deep the roots of neglect can grow. Believing you are dead or do not exist might sound like fiction, but it's a stark reality for those with Cotard's Delusion. Imagine waking up one day and feeling as though you've slipped beyond the veil of life, yet you're still breathing, still walking. This is the bewildering world of someone living with Cotard's Delusion. Cotard's Delusion is an extraordinary psychiatric disorder that warps an individual's perception of reality. People affected by this condition suffer from the belief that they are dead, do not exist, or have lost their internal organs. In some extreme cases, they might feel they are immortal. This delusion typically sprouts from roots entangled with severe depression and psychosis. The mind, in a state of distress, begins to generate these nihilistic beliefs about the body and existence. Those experiencing Cotard's Delusion often describe feelings of being detached from their bodies and their lives, as if they are living in a constant dream or nightmare. The symptoms can be as varied as they are bizarre, ranging from denying one's existence to believing that one's flesh is decomposing. Such beliefs aren't just distressing, they can lead to severe neglect of personal health and hygiene, as individuals no longer believe they need to care for a body they perceive as dead. Treating Cotard's Delusion involves a careful and considered approach, typically employing a combination of antidepressants, antipsychotics, and sometimes electroconvulsive therapy. This treatment aims not only to alleviate the symptoms but also to bring the individual back to a more grounded understanding of existence. Cotard's Delusion blurs the line between existence and non-existence. Can art be so beautiful that it overwhelms you to the point of physical and emotional symptoms? Welcome to Stendhal Syndrome. Imagine stepping into a gallery in Florence, surrounded by masterpieces of the Renaissance. For most, this is a delightful experience. However, for a rare few, the overwhelming beauty triggers something extraordinary. Stendhal Syndrome, named after the 19th century French author who first described his experience during his visit to Florence, manifests as a whirlwind of symptoms: rapid heartbeat, dizziness, and even hallucinations, all provoked by exposure to art. This condition, while rare, tends to surface in places rich in art and history, such as Florence, where the sheer volume and intensity of beauty can evoke profound psychological reactions. Those affected might find themselves needing to sit down, or in more severe cases, requiring immediate psychological support and stress management techniques. Understanding Stendhal Syndrome helps in appreciating how deeply art can impact us, emotionally and physically. For some, the beauty of art can indeed be overwhelming. What if you woke up one day speaking with a foreign accent? Imagine the bewildering experience of sounding as though you're from a completely different part of the world overnight. This is the reality for those with foreign accent syndrome, a rare and fascinating speech disorder. Typically triggered by a stroke or brain injury, foreign accent syndrome alters the way victims speak, making their native language sound as if it's been influenced by the accent of another country. The changes can be subtle or striking, affecting intonation, pitch, and pronunciation. Victims often face a myriad of challenges. The sudden shift in their speech can lead to confusion and frustration, not only for the individuals themselves but also among their family and friends. This can deeply affect their social interactions and sense of identity, sometimes leading to social isolation. Treatment usually involves speech therapy aimed at helping regain their original speech patterns, coupled with counseling to help manage the emotional and psychological impacts. Foreign accent syndrome challenges one's vocal identity in unexpected ways. Today we ventured through a labyrinth of the mind's most unusual conditions. In this exploration we first encountered Capgras Syndrome, where individuals believe their loved ones have been replaced by imposters. Then, we delved into Alice in Wonderland syndrome, a condition that distorts perception, making the familiar seem grotesquely unfamiliar. We also discussed Diogenes Syndrome, characterized by extreme self-neglect and hoarding behaviors. Next, we uncovered Cotard's Delusion, where one is convinced they are dead or do not exist. Stendhal Syndrome revealed itself through physical and emotional symptoms, triggered by exposure to art. And not to forget, Foreign Accent Syndrome, which dramatically changes one's manner of speech following a severe trauma. These conditions, though rare, underscore the vast spectrum of human psychology. They remind us that understanding and compassion are paramount. As we learn more about these disorders, we not only expand our knowledge, but also enhance our capacity to support those affected. In understanding these rare conditions, we open our minds to the complexities and resilience of the human spirit.